What is up, people? My name is Jeffrey Kaminsky, and today I'm going to show you how to structure your strength training so that you don't blow your freaking knee out on the mat. But forget about the weight room for a second. There's all kinds of other stuff you need to be doing to minimize the chances of your knee turning into a noodle. First, you gotta get better at your sport, because if you are the one dominating your opponent and controlling the match, you're probably not going to get hurt. If your head and your hands defense get to the point where people aren't even getting to your legs, you're not going to be placed in some of those dangerous scrambles where bad things could happen. So get better at your sport. And second, avoid bad situations. Do not jump off of things you shouldn't jump off of, and don't roll with people you shouldn't roll with. And if you get caught, just tap out. Your ego is not going to pay for your medical bills. Third, wear knee pads before you are forced to wear knee pads. Now, I'll admit, I was the first one making fun of the JV wrestlers wearing double knee pads, but that was before my knees got to the point where I could barely even touch them lightly without feeling excruciating pain, and I couldn't walk up or down the stairs or squat the empty bar without feeling like a 90-year-old man. So now you will not catch me on the mat without my double knee pads. It's going to do a few things for you. Mainly, it's going to decrease any kind of impact on your knee so that you don't get bursitis, you don't get bone bruises. It's also going to help add some more compression and add some extra stability to your knee, so if you get in one of those bad situations, you might not get hurt or hurt as bad. It's also going to keep those tissues nice and warm, your tendons and your ligaments, so that they stretch instead of completely tearing. Finally, we need to talk about cutting weight, because anytime you are dehydrated in a prolonged calorie deficit, you are increasing your risk of injury, because not only is your tissues not repairing themselves, they also lose some extensibility, so they're more likely to snap instead of tearing. Now, ideally, everyone would compete at their natural weight class, but that's not always an option. So if you are going to cut weight, make sure you're managing that weight the right way and cutting yourself down a little more gradually and not crash cutting to reduce the risk of you getting hurt. All right, now with that stuff out of the way, we need to talk about joints, because your body has stable joints that are designed to move very little or not at all, and it has mobile joints that are designed to move all over the freaking place. And the way that your body works, it has chains of mobile joints followed by a stable joint, then a mobile, stable, mobile, so on and so forth. And when we look at the leg, the knee is that stable joint that's designed to move very little. So as to bend forward and backwards, flex and extend, that's it. If it's bending sideways, something very bad has happened. This means that the joints above and below the knee, your hips and your ankles, need to be extremely mobile. And if you're lacking any mobility, your knees, which again are not supposed to bend a whole lot, are going to be forced to move extra, which is why before we even approach a weight room session, we need to open up our ankles and our hips by doing things like stretching out our calves, both in a bent and straight knee position in order to stretch out both muscles of the calves. We can also take a weight like a kettlebell or dumbbell, put it over our knee and rock forward, back and forth in order to open up our calves even more. We can also do things like deep squat holds to further increase our ankle mobility. Then, when we approach the hips, in a wrestling stance, we're down here, our hips get super tight. Everyday life, we're sitting, watching TV, playing video games, our hips get super tight. So we gotta do things like our couch stretch to open up our hip flexors, open up our quads, and things like our hip 90-90s to improve our hip internal and external rotation. You need to be stretching your muscles like your piriformis, you need to be doing your pigeon and butterfly stretches, as well as your leg swings and lateral lunges. And these should be done probably before every single lower body lift, as well as part of your regular mobility routine. We also need to be addressing our soft tissue work so that our muscles feel good and they increase mobility also. We need to be taking a foam roller, a cross ball, or a massage gun and regularly working out our calves, our perineals, which are basically the muscles on the side of your lower leg right there. You also need to take a lacrosse ball and roll out your plantar fascia, because when that gets tight, it affects all kinds of other stuff up and down the chain. We also need to roll out our quads, our hamstrings, our IT band, our adductors on the inside of our thighs, because when these muscles get tight, they tie into the knee, and when they get tight, they put all kinds of undue stress on the knees. We also need to help roll out our hip flexors. You also got to be strategic about this. You shouldn't be doing all of this as a blanket statement for every single lift. Let's say if I know I'm going to be squatting, I know I need my ankles to be mobile, so I'm going to really hammer this stuff right here. But I'm not going to hammer out my soft tissue work on my quads, because it's going to turn my quads off for my squat, and I need my quads in order to squat heavy. So you need to be a little strategic with this stuff and apply it based on what you're doing for that individual session. All right, so now we're going to get into some templates and what an actual training session could look like. And like I said, these are templates. You do not have to take them bang for bang. You can take them and put them anywhere else in your program. Right now it's laid out in like a upper lower split. So here be the first lower body day, finish second lower body day. But you don't have to do it like that. You could take this strength block, you could put it on some other day. If you're doing a full body program, maybe you keep these as day 1 and day 3, and you take some of this stuff and you put it on your second day. It's all up to you. I also made sure to put the type of movement here and not a specific exercise. That way you can plug and chug basically. Because you're going to have different equipment than I do, and you're going to have different exercises that you like more or less than I do. So these are templates that you can use and apply to your training. It's not a strict thing, and that's good for you because you can make it yours. We're going to start off with our hinge dominant day. We're going to start off this first strength superset with a single leg balance or single leg plyometric exercise. Because the more balance you have in your ankle, the more bodily awareness and proprioception you have, the less likely you are to put your knees in bad situations because you control where your body's at. And once you're good enough at those single leg balance movements, you can go on to a single leg plyometric exercise. We're talking single leg hops, single leg box jumps, single leg vertical jumps, etc. You even do things like skater jumps or what the hell's it called? You do lunge jumps. So we're going to do some kind of single leg balance or plyometric exercise in order to start off the superset. So ideally, you're going to start off with the single leg balances until you get good enough at them where your balance is fine enough to do those more intensive plyometric exercises where you're working acceleration and decelerating on a single leg. Then we move into our main strength movement of the day, which on our hinge day is obviously going to be some kind of hinge, whether that's a deadlift or an RDL. Or on a squat day, a back squat, a front squat, split squat, what have you. But the main things of these are that these are heavy absolute strength movements. We're moving heavy ass weight through large ranges of motion in a weighted stretch. Let's think about this for a second. Think about a cross country guy and then think about Ronnie Coleman. If you kicked both of their legs, you're probably going to snap that cross country guy's freaking leg because he has no muscle tone whatsoever. Whereas your leg's probably going to break touching Ronnie Coleman. You want your legs to be as strong as physically possible in order to prevent knee injuries. That's why we're doing things like our RDLs, our deadlifts, our reverse lunges, our split squats. And then when we go on to our squat day, these need to be done ass to grass because in those deep ranges of motion, more stress is being applied to those tendons and ligaments, which in the olden days meant never squat below parallel. But now that we're smarter, we understand that the more you squat ass to grass with heavy weight, the safer your knees will be in some of those sketchy scrambles where your knees are being placed in that exact same joint angle because you're comfortable moving heavy ass weight there. So if that means that you have to put like a plate underneath your ankles in order to get down in those deeper ranges of motion, do it because your knees are going to be thanking you if you squat ass to grass regularly. But hopefully with your hip and ankle mobility you did earlier, you can just go down there without having any assistance. So after we do these things, oh, and by the way, these should not be done in like a regular up and down 1-0-1 tempo. And because we're focused on our knees, we need to be doing some kind of eccentric tempo where we're doing a 1, 2, 3, or a 5-second negative in order to place more stress on those connective tissues, our tendons and our ligaments to force them to grow stronger. So make sure you're doing your absolute strength movements with some kind of eccentric emphasis. Then we move into our core movement. And now normally I'd recommend wrestlers doing something bracing like a weighted low plank or an ab wheel rollout. But since we're specifically focused on our knees, we're going to do stuff like a weighted side plank or a Copenhagen plank, where we're not only working some of those stabilizing muscles, we're also placing some lateral stress on those tendons and ligaments so they're forced to adapt to go stronger so that you don't tear your LCL when somebody low singles you. The great thing about core movements also is that they make our dynamic trunk control a lot better so we can control our body in space and not let ourselves get in bad positions where our knees are more likely to get snapped with weight on them. So we've done our single leg balance of plyo, then our absolute strength movement, and then our core movement. We're probably pretty freaking tired, which is why we're going to take some kind of injury prevention exercise that's going to give us a lot of benefit, but not wear us out at all. We're going to do that as the fourth thing in the superset. And these are basically just loaded physical therapy exercises like band eversions. You could do, what else could you do? You could do clamshells, you could do banded monster walks, you could do X-band laterals, all kinds of stuff to work some of those tinier muscles that are going to give us big bang for your buck, but not wear us out from when we go back into the rest of a superset. So after we finish our strength superset, which again, you can place anywhere in the training week, this is just laid out as a template, we move into our second block right here, which is going to be an isometric block. And isometrics are basically where you're just keeping the exact same position while under load for an extended amount of time. And the great thing about isometrics is that they place even more stress on those tendons and ligaments and force them to adapt and grow stronger, even compared to those eccentrics movements up there. So we're going to start doing a squat or a quad isometric on our hinge day. And the reason for that is, let's say if I took my hinge day and I'm doing an RDL, then I did a pause RDL later, I'm doing 2 RDLs in the exact same day, 2 hinges. Whereas if I did a hinge here and a hinge on this day, I'm doing it twice in that week. I'm increasing my frequency and I'm getting better used to the movement. And that's going to make me stronger in the long run, which is why I'm going to have a hinge on this day and a hinge isometric on that day, and a squat movement here and a squat isometric there. So for a squat or quad isometric, we could do a pause squat, we could do a weighted wall sit, we could even do a leg extension and just hold it. Now there's 2 main types of isometrics. I'm not going to go too far in depth into the weeds here, but basically there's something called a yielding isometric where you're fighting against gravity. Think about that weighted wall sit. I'm fighting to stay in that position while gravity's trying to pull me down. There's also something called an overcoming isometric where I'm fighting against an immovable object. Think about if I took the safeties and I put them right here, I'm trying to squat up into it. No matter how hard I push, unless I'm really freaking strong, I'm not going anywhere. For those overcoming isometrics, I'd recommend probably 5 to 15 seconds, whereas for the yielding isometrics where you're fighting against gravity, we're talking 20 to 90 seconds in order to get the full benefit out of those. So like I said, we could do a weighted wall sit there, we could do a pause squat, we could do a pin squat, all kinds of stuff, but it's going to be focused on a squat pattern or putting emphasis on the quads. Whereas on our squat day, we're doing a hinge or a hamstring focused isometric. So this could be a pause RDL or a pause deadlift. You'd be holding a part of a Nordic hamstring curl, or it could be holding your legs on a hamstring curl machine. And you shouldn't just be doing these at either end range of motion. If you're doing it through various ranges of motion, maybe we're here one day, maybe we're there, maybe we're there. And the reason for that is because at different joint angles in your knee, different ligaments are being worked. So it's always a smart idea to vary the angles at which you're doing that. Maybe some days you're doing a pin squat all the way up here. Maybe some days you're doing it all the way down in the hole of the squat. So after we do our isometric exercise, that's to take a lot of focus. Then we're moving to a bilateral exercise right here, where that's focusing on our hamstrings or our quads. So for the hamstrings, we could do something like a glute ham raise or a Nordic hamstring curl. Something that's going to put a lot of emphasis on those tissues and force them to grow stronger and bigger in order to prevent those injuries. We also do something like a quad fallout, or even just like some kind of squat variation there. It's up to you. Then we could do stuff here to work the insides and outsides of our thighs. We could do something for our adductors. Think about the bad girl machine. You could take a med ball and squeeze out with your legs. Whereas on this day, we could do something for our abductors to work our abduction and our external rotation, like the good girl machine. Or you could do something like clamshells or X-bands, or just do monster walks. Any kind of thing just to vary up which muscles you're hitting throughout the week. That's our second isometric block right there. And now we're moving into our third block, which is our assistance work. We're going to start off doing some kind of single leg hinge or hamstring work. So basically that could be like a single leg RDL with a dumbbell or kettlebell, or it could be a single leg glider hamstring curl. Anything that's going to put emphasis on one leg at a time, that's going to help us decrease any kind of muscle imbalances. Especially if you've injured any kind of limb, you'll notice that one limb is a lot stronger than the other, and this is going to help prevent injuries, and it's going to help you recover from them also. So a single leg hinge or hamstring movement, then we do our single leg squat or quad movement. That could be a pistol squat, it could be a dumbbell goblet lateral lunge, it could be a step up, a step down, you name it. And basically the reason why I kind of flipped them here was just to put more emphasis on one of those. Because let's say on our hinge day, let's say we do a heavier hinge right there. On our squat day, we do a heavier single leg squat. Just vary them up and flip-flop them, do different movements on each day. Lastly, we're doing stuff for our ankles because we know how important those are for keeping our knees nice and safe. Now, the knees over toes guys is going to tell you that dorsiflexion and weighted dorsiflexion and tip raises are the key to unlocking your athleticism. And while it's true that those will make you better, and it's not going to do as much as he kind of would lead you to believe, but they do tie into your knees. So getting those guys stronger is going to make your knees happier and help increase your ankle mobility by making sure that your ankles are more even front to back. So you could do some kind of tip raise there, whether that's with one of those fancy devices, or you take a plate and just raise your feet up like that, or use your own body weight. Whereas in this day, we're doing our plantar flexion, which is basically we're just going up on your toes like that. That could be a calf raise, that could be some kind of calf isometric, you name it. Like I said, these are just templates, so you can take your favorite exercises and mold them to what you like and the equipment you had available. Now I'm going to show you guys some examples for each different category right here, so you got some examples you can pick and choose from. I'm also going to show you an example progression you could use for all kinds of stuff here. Alright, so if I've done my job successfully, you will now be able to walk away with your understanding of how to structure your strength training so that you have a nice long career without blowing out any of your knees. Now myself, I've been somewhat fortunate in the fact that I've never really had anything completely tear, but I've popped my LCL 3 times. I've got scar tissue in both knees probably. And like the last year or two, like I said, it's been pretty bad being able to touch my knees or walk upstairs or whatever. Doing better now because of stuff like this. This is isometric, so it saved me. But I'm curious to know what kind of injuries you guys have dealt with your knees and what kind of injury videos you're looking for next. I'm probably going to do one in the lower back relatively soon. I also made one on the shoulders, which you can check out right here. And that's all I got for you guys. I'll see y'all later, alright?